I think the first thing to say, this is a really interesting innovation. In effect, what you have is a missile, the A-11R-73, which is a Russian missile. It's an air-to-air missile. So it's supposed to be fired from a Russian jet to knock down other jets. Uh, there are a number of things to consider here. Firstly, Ukrainians have a lot of these missiles. So that is a good thing. So we're not having to buy very expensive Patriot missiles and other missiles. So they already have them. And what appears to be done, the Danes and the Brits, and this work appears to have gone on in the UK, have repurposed this missile to be a ground to air, in other words, air defense. And we know how important air defense is in Ukraine. It's the key currency. We're seeing hundreds, if not thousands, of Russian drones and missiles fired every day, mainly at civilian targets and critical national infrastructure. And hitherto, Ukraine's had to rely on very, very expensive Patriot missiles, its own fighter jets in the air, and shorter range air defense. Now, what Gravehawk brings them is really an area that they don't possess. So Gravehawk can knock down drones and missiles and potentially cruise missiles as well at up to 32 kilometers. So that is very significant. It also, what the Brits and the Danes seem to have done, have integrated a target acquisition system to it, which enables the missile to acquire the target at 32 kilometers, even further away. And then the missile itself can track that target as well. So this is just showing the pace of innovation during warfare. Rather than buying really expensive Patriot missiles at sort of $1 million a pop, what they've done is use something they've already got. Now, the fact that it's in an ISO container sort of means that it can be moved around relatively quickly to where it's needed. We understand it only takes 2 or 3 people to actually man this system. Now, a Patriot battery, we're talking about tens of people, so an awful lot of people, awful lot of training. So that is absolutely key as well. I think the other thing to consider is that this is now, I mean, the British government are just putting this out in the media, but quite apart from sort of saying this is going to be available in a year's time, we understand 15 systems are going to be available like in the next few weeks. Early in the next year. So again, that is hugely significant. So I think on the face of it, it doesn't seem a big deal. But actually, when you consider quite how many missiles that Ukraine already has, and probably, these are a tiny cost compared to Patriot, which Ukraine's using at the moment. And no doubt there are a lot of these missiles around the world. If Europe wants to buy more for Ukraine, the training bill seems to be pretty small. These seem to be very effective missiles and will do a critical job of protecting Ukraine's sort of infrastructure, which is taking such a hammering at the moment. And the fact that this kit's going to be in there pretty soon, I think this is a win-win all round, and hopefully a psychological boost for people in Ukraine, but also a recognition to everybody that, we are not just sat here doing nothing, quite apart from what's happening in Ukraine. There are lots of people like the British military and the Danish military who are working on capability to enable Ukraine to defend itself and hold out until we can get to some sort of ceasefire or peace deal. Its mobility will be a bonus. One of the challenges, no doubt, the Russians are looking at all the Ukrainian air defense systems, the Patriot batteries and others, and will target them. Because when you're conducting a military operation, what you want to do is to write down your enemy's potential to defend themselves. And a key part of any Russian attack, I'm sure, will be first of all putting an electronic sort of blanket over the area they're attacking, so that Ukraine's electronic systems won't work. Then targeting key areas like air defense systems. Before you actually attack the target you're trying to attack. That's sort of sound military tactics. However, if you have a mobile platform like this that one day can be in one place, the next day could be 100, 200 kilometers away, it makes it very much more difficult for what we call target acquisition. And these ISO containers can be chucked on the back of any sort of lorry and could be anything. So, if Russian intelligence is looking for air defense systems, there will be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of 40-foot ISO containers around Ukraine. And, Russia can't attack them all. So, yeah, again, I think it's quite a clever bit of deception here. No doubt these ISO containers, and certainly the ones we see in the videos, are not painted in camouflage with green saying this is an air defense system. And actually, it could be anything. So, again, it would appear that people have thought pretty deeply about this. And, from a whole host, we call it across the lines of development. It's not just the capability, it's the logistics behind it. It's the organization, the structure, the manpower, the training, et cetera, et cetera. Something that has been produced so rapidly seems to have covered a lot of these bases. So, yeah, I think, on the face of it, this doesn't sound hugely significant to the uninitiated, but actually, I think this is the sort of thing that will make the Russians sit up and listen. A little bit like a few weeks ago when President Trump suggested he was going to give cruise missiles to Ukraine, suddenly the Kremlin wanted to speak. This is probably not quite in that area, but it will certainly change the Kremlin's metrics that potentially it can't destroy the Ukrainian power infrastructure as quickly and as easily as it hitherto thought. Sometimes one has to really take with a pinch of salt what Donald Trump says. Tomorrow he might say something completely different. I think his comments over the last sort of 48 hours at Europe are really unhelpful. And, you wonder what point he is trying to make there. His point, perhaps last year, that Europe wasn't doing enough was a fair one. But I think this is a demonstration that actually Europe is doing a hell of a lot. And these sort of capabilities are sort of one of many. But this one is hugely significant because it fills a gap that is really needed to be covered. And all these Russian missiles and drones, the hundreds, if not thousands, that are fired a day, are having a really detrimental impact on Ukraine, mainly the civilian infrastructure and civilians. And this seems to be a very effective, very cost-effective way of covering that gap. So hopefully Donald Trump will see that and will realize that he's not going to have to give more of his Patriots away, or rather get Europe to pay huge amounts for his Patriot missiles. So, yeah, I think one doesn't want to take what he said in this area too literally.